So. What is up, everybody? Time for me to get to work. Thank you for joining me of an evening. I have a small commission that I need to get a good amount of work done on today. So I welcome your company. We're listening to an old villancico, an old Spanish Christmas carol, sort of a Three Kings carol. Riu Riu Chiu, which is the sound one imagines a kingfisher makes. So what we're going to do today is start cranking on a poem kind of about joviality. The commission is inspired by joviality and by something I did with folks from the Anselm Society. We did a podcast on joviality. And we talked about jovial things. And in talking about jovial things, we were talking about feasting, celebrating, and one particular aspect of joviality and feasting emerged to inform this commission. So this piece is going to be a highly structured piece inspired by the feeling of feeling slightly, but superbly and sublimely tipsy. Slightly, sorry, I have to write that down. Superbly, sublimely tipsy. So the idea, it's wine makes the heart merry, right? This is supposed to be a glad thing. So that's the idea. We're gonna write about how good it is to be right at that moment where truly the heart is glad, The expressions, the gestures are sweeping, and the rhetoric is exalted, but everything is just right with that. And I think we're going to want to describe it from a first person sort of perspective. So, in order to prepare for this, I've brought up a C.S. Lewis poem, a very jovial C.S. Lewis poem. This is from Punch magazine, October 1947, which is why there's a cartoon. So this is a C.S. Lewis poem. You can see it's credited to N.W., but this is Saint Louis. So, Roi S'Amuse. The king amuses himself. This is not the only literary use of the phrase, but so here we're going to have the greatest act of creativity coming simply because of delight. Right? So here Jehovah is envisioned as Jove. And if you think that that is a silly conflation, I mean, if it were strictly if the wicked Jove of mythology were conflated with great holy Jehovah, then that would be, and that were all it was, that would in fact be disgusting. But the high God, the God that the Athenians didn't know who they were worshiping. There actually some great cases are made about how that could actually be Jehovah, and as the reason that Paul quoted Aeschylus, etc., whatever. Even etymologically, we can make these associations. So here, this poem is about the creation of the world out of pure overflow. And the reason to use Jove is that Jove as a planet, it's Jupiter, the planet, is associated with, well, all sorts of things you're about to see here, but it fits with the bigness, the overflow, etc. And I'm going to want to pay attention to the structure as well as I advance in my own writing tonight. But all right, so Jove gazed. Actually, let's turn off the music. All right. Roi S'Amuse. Jove gazed on woven mazes of patterned movement as the atoms whirled. His glance turned into dancing, burning color gods who rushed upon the sullen world, ravaging, savaging, creating it anew, silver and purple, shrill-voiced yellow, turgid crimson, and virgin blue. Jove stared on overbearing and aching splendor of the naked rocks, where his gaze smote, hazily floated, to mount like thistledown in countless flocks, fruit-loving, root-loving gods, cool and green, of heather and orchard, feathery grasses, pollen lily, the olive and the bean. I'm reading this in the right order, right? Yes. Follows the creation of the world. Separating, yep. Jove laughed like cloven-shafted lightning as laughter into brightness broke. From every dint where the severed splinters had scattered, a sylvan or a satyr woke. Ounces came pouncing, dragon people flew. There was spirited stallion, squirrel unrespectful, clanging raven, and kangaroo. Jove sighed. The hoving tide of ocean trembled at the motion of his breath. His sigh turned into white, eternal, radiant Aphrodite, unafraid of death. A fragrance, a vagrant unrest, on earth she flung. There was bravery and building and favoring and fondling, and chuckling music and suckling of the young. Jove thought. He wove and wrought at 1,000 clarities. From his brows sprang, with earnest mien, stern Athene. The cold armor on her shoulders rang. Our sires at the fires of her lucid eyes began to speak in symbols, to seek out causes, to name the creatures. We became man. World and man unfurled their banner, the blazing planets on the azure field, fresh robed in flesh, the ennobled spirits carousing in their myriads reeled. There was frolic and holiday. Jove smiled to see the abyss emppeopled, his bliss imparted, the throng that was his and no longer he. Especially those last couple of verses. I mean, this is Jehovah. This is Yahweh. This is the Christian God. if you if you've read Hesiod, then you know this ain't no Greek telling. This is way too joyful, even with stern Athena. All right, man, this is brilliant. I mean, I just love. It's so interesting how little he did with his poetry when he was alive. The internal lines he has here, the feminine rhymes he uses, right? Like Jove gazed on woven mazes. There's an extra syllable there. And he's not even like rhyming feminine with feminine. He's like matching masculine with feminine. Jove gazed, that's masculine, on woven mazes. Even here, that kind of happens, right? Jove sighed, the hoving tide. There's our rhyme of, right? Kind of like mazes. Jove sighed, the hoving tide of ocean trembled at the motion of his breath. That's how to make enjambment work. So often, enjambment is not fun. Like there actually is great joy in having your sentences end at the end of lines. Because you're matching your thought pattern with the rhythm and rhyme pattern. And a highly enjambed poem is simply, and I mean, it's very much poetry. Very, very, very much. I'm just describing an effect here. So a highly enjambed poem is simply a metrical poem that nods at rhymes as it runs past, right? So every few feet, it hits a rhyme, but it just because it has kept on going, it's almost like just a tip of the cap or a wave of the hand as the car goes by. And it really, really accelerates things in a way that can be hard for the mind to keep track of because you're not completing thoughts necessarily when the reader expects it. You have to enter a different mindset. But here, with using these little feminine rhymes, I love this to flow into the next line. I mean, some would say it's an extra syllable or too many feet, but like whatever. But even the internal things, like here, this third verse, Jove laughed like cloven shafted. See, there it is again. Do all of them have that feminine second line ending? Jove stared on overbearing. Jove thought he wove and wrought at. World and man unfurled their banner. Yeah, every single one. That's really cool. This guy was so brilliant, and he loved everything he did. He loved. I love that. All right, so Jove laughed like cloven shafted lightning as laughter into brightness broke. Okay, so we've got this, and you could think of Jove laughed like cloven shafted as a line. So Jove laughed like cloven shafted. So that's four stresses. Lightning, his laughter into brightness broke. Well, that's 5. From every dint where the severed splinters had scattered, a sylvan or a satyr woke. Yeah, so that's 4 and 4. But there we had that little feminine thing again, right? From every dent where the severed splinters. Ounces came pouncing. I love that. Ounces came pouncing. Are you kidding? Severed splinters had scattered, a sylvan or a satyr woke. Brilliant. Spirited stallion, squirrel, and respectful. All those S's. I'm in the middle of that. Ounces came pouncing. And I just love the bouncing, right? So there's this smooth sibilance, uh, but there are all these S's in a row, and then bounce, and then a few more S's, and then more assonants: clanging, raven, and kangaroo. Are you kidding me? Clanging, raven, and kangaroo. Do you see how every single syllable here is considered? Just brilliant. Right, if you map this, though, the author of Planet Narnia maps this as well. I didn't really love how he did it, but we've got AA or AA prime, B, CCB, or CC prime, right? B, D, D. All right, so that longer one: silver and purple, shrill-voiced yellow, turgid crimson, and virgin blue, ravaging, savaging, creating it anew. Okay. So really, we've got 4 and then 8. It's like a 4 and 4. There was bravery in building and favoring and fondling and chuckling music and suckling of the young. Isn't that interesting? There's the same number of stresses in silver and purple, virgin blue, as there are in bravery in building, suckling of the young. That's pretty cool. All right. So here's the piece. There's the structure as well. All right, so impairment, not quite drunkenness, happy glass of escape, off kilter, off center harmonies, throaty color of violins, wobble, witty, big sweep of motions, a pleasant haziness. Okay. All right, here's some of the articles I can get some inspiration from. Jupiter, Melchizedek, and the Christian virtue of being jovial. Hannah Langdon. Instead of being grave and mysterious like most Calormenes, they walked with a swing and let their arms and shoulders go free and chatted and laughed. Rigney. Joe Rigney quotes this. He's written a lot on Narnia. One was whistling. You could see that they were ready to be friends with anyone who was friendly and didn't give a fig for anyone who wasn't. Shasta thought he had never seen anything so lovely in his life. You know, I met a kid named Loon this weekend. It was pretty cool. Named after the king of Arkenland. This isn't a description of jesters or children, but of kings and queens walking through town with their court in C.S. Lewis's novel, The Horse and His Boy. Having grown up as a slave with Calormenes, whose nobles have no humor and whose peasants have no joy, Shasta's encounter with the Narnian court is a revelation of the effect that goodness and nobility are meant to have. Nobility. That's something that came up a lot in our conversation about joviality. In his epistle, St. Peter identifies Christians as both kings and priests. I've been reflecting on how this identity should shape how we live, and after doing some research, an unexpected quality emerged: being jovial. Saint Pope Leo the Great wrote in a commentary on 1 Peter 2:9, For all regenerated in Christ are made kings by the sign of the cross. They are consecrated priests by the oil of the Holy Spirit, so that beyond the special service of our ministry as priests, all spiritual and mature Christians know that they are a royal race and are sharers in the office of the priesthood. The connection between priesthood and kingship goes all the way back to Melchizedek, the enigmatic priest king of Salem, who foreshadowed Christ's roles as priest and king. Fascinatingly, Melchizedek is sometimes translated, "My king is Jupiter." Jupiter's other name is Jove. This is brought up in our conversation at Anselm Society, which is where we get the word jovial, and this is where it gets exciting. In medieval cosmology, each planet was associated with particular qualities of behavior or influences. Jupiter was associated with being joyful or jovial. As C.S. Lewis writes in The Discarded Image, the jovial character is cheerful, festive yet temperate, tranquil, magnanimous. Magnanimous is a word that gets tossed around a lot in my circles, in classical education circles, trying to instill nobility. Jupiter's association with kingship goes back as far as the Greco-Roman myths, where Jupiter, Jove Zeus, is the king of the gods, and the Divine Comedy, where Dante places rulers in Jupiter's sphere of paradise. What makes joviality a virtue of kings and priests? This was my big point in our conversation at Anselm. And what does it have to do with our vocation? First, it's a way to confront evil. Both priests and kings in different ways are called to defend their people. The king is in charge of protecting his land from invaders, and the priest intercedes for the sinful, which means he needs to face evil to offer purification. If you laugh in the face of danger or keep a sense of humor in the midst of suffering, that means you aren't under its power. In The Return of the King, Gandalf and Pippin have a tense conversation with Denethor about Mordor's looming invasion. Pippin leaves feeling discouraged until he hears Gandalf laugh. Pippin glanced in some wonder at the face now close beside his own, for the sound of that laugh had been gay and merry. Yet in the wizard's face he saw at first only lines of care and sorrow, though as he looked more intently, he perceived that under all there was a great joy, a fountain of mirth, enough to set a kingdom laughing were it to gush forth. Not only does Gandalf have the courage to confront Denethor, but he is strong enough to see the humor in the steward's pettiness. Even though the larger situation is becoming dangerous, Gandalf's joviality keeps him from despair, which in turn encourages Pippin. Being jovial is a sign of courage. Very important. A quick aside. Kings are men, and descriptions of joviality tend to be described in more masculine terms. But it's not an exclusive but it's not an exclusively masculine virtue. King here can be representative of all royalty, both male and female. In Proverbs 31, the ideal virtuous woman is described as someone clothed with strength and dignity who laughs at the time to come. Second, joviality is a sign of robust temperance. Lewis describes the jovial person as festive yet temperate. Joviality is not the same as drunken hilarity or constant comedy. It's free and unstuffy, but not uncontrolled. So this is important for my project. Not the same as drunken hilarity or constant comedy. That's an interesting phrase. Constant comment, constant comedy, comedy, comment. I wonder what the constant comment slogans have been over the years. Free and unstuffy, but not uncontrolled. As Pope Leo the Great commented, for what is more king-like than to find yourself ruler over your body after having surrendered your soul to God? A kingly person knows how to celebrate and enjoy life without being excessive. He is strong enough to be both powerful and peaceful, to drink without getting drunk, to fight without malice, or joke without becoming silly or degrading. And I think one of the things that comes into play here is that the kingly person is always responsible, because he is always responsible for others. A man who gets drunk alone in his own home is not available to protect his family. Right, and that's the initiation of kingship. In a similar way, a priest has to understand evil in order to fight it, but that understanding has to be moderated to avoid either naivete or dangerous curiosity about the darkness. In joking, as in fighting, you have to be close enough to your opponent or the subject of the joke to see what it really is and engage with it, but far enough away to be secure from its clutches and not fall into defeat and despair. Third, to be jovial is a sign of hope. The jovial person is in the know on the cosmic punchline. That's good. And no matter how bad things seem, the devil's days are numbered and evil will never last. There is a king on the throne who has won victory through his blood. He has already faced the darkness and overcome it. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. Yeah, I wonder if Lord of the Dance can be worked into this. I dropped my pen. No, on the mechanical pencil. And I'll lead you all wherever you may be. Oh, now that we're not reading poetry, I can get the music back on, nice and quiet. Hope exists because of the possibility of despair. Yeah, joviality, like joy, I would say, exists in, it's not like bliss or even blessedness. I'm not saying that those are exclusive of joy, but joy exists in the presence of despair, in the presence of suffering. We can laugh because we know that the light will overcome the darkness, although the darkness doesn't comprehend it. I don't like the use of comprehend. This is why I'd argue there's a place for dark humor in the appropriate context. You shouldn't let anything stay beyond the reach of mirthful light. Mhm. It's the laugh of the king in battle who knows that victory is near, and the laugh of the priest who knows that a sacrifice will restore what has been broken. Mhm. Yeah, Aslan is a very jovial figure. Joviality in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is something I have not set up to examine. I need to get writing tonight. Finally, joviality is a display of magnanimity. It's an overflow and generosity of spirit. A good king uses his power and resources to provide for his kingdom. A priest, as Alexander Schmemann writes, stands in the center and unifies it in his act of blessing God, both receiving the world from God and offering it to God. In doing so, the priest participates in the reconciling of sinners to God and the healing of people. The magnanimous person accepts that what he's been given or what he's been given and then gives it to others. The jovial person takes in the world, recognizes the humor in it, and offers that mirth to others. Okay. The best religious have a spirit of nobility. It's a very Catholic use of religious, and one I approve of. Of strength, good. Oh, it's because they were talking about nuns, monks, and priests. Yeah. Of strength, goodness, honor, justice, joy, and good humor. They are jovial. To be jovial is to have both a sense of humor and sense of magnanimity. Yeah, magnanimity is important. Vocation as priests and kings. Hmm. The StreamYard was not as flexible with adjusting all that. You gotta get back in there. There I go. No, over the course, so this is Douglas Wilson, Jovial Introspection. Over the course of the last year, I've been doing a major review of C.S. Lewis's work. As always, Lewis is a delight, even when he says something appalling. On the one hand, Lewis is a jovial personality, capacious and overflowing, open-handed in knowledge. At the same time, Lewis is a hardline introspectionist. That is an interesting motivation for sure. Nobody's nice motivationist in me as he does. Constant things about his writing, that is ubiquitous. Right. Yeah, this is not useful to me right now. Lewis totally upends this. The right result from godly introspection should be joy, and if there is no joy, there was no introspection. Okay, there's something useful here. We know how to be jolly and carefree and outgoing, but only by adopting. Okay. Okay. So I think that one of the things that this piece is going to end up being very first person, I think. And looking out at the world and experiencing the emotions of feeling slightly tipsy yourself, again in exaltation. But I think one of the things that this does, and maybe this is just my own experience, but I feel like there's introspection with a couple of drinks. And then that introspection can somehow contradictorily overflow. So the right result from godly introspection should be joy. And if there is no joy, there was no introspection. Jovial introspection is a rare thing. So jovial introspection. All right. So we got something out of that. Oh, wow. This mentions Candide. The romantic rationalist. And a conversation about jovial Calvinism. Okay. Yesterday's post reminds me of an exchange at the 2013 DG National Conference on C.S. Lewis. During the speaker panel, the topic of jovial Calvinism arose, and the discussion was later published in The Romantic Rationalist. Okay, so Douglas Wilson, Phil Ryken, whose name I haven't heard in a couple of decades. Wow. Okay. Oh, and Randy Alcorn. All right. So Wilson says, I guess the first thing I would say is that you have to be careful that the joviality is not sort of a Dr. Pangloss like out of Candide. I love that Candide is mentioned. And that's one of the most important things a Christian can read, and read it to hate it. Where someone who's going through a terrible world of suffering is not clued into what's happening. That's not joviality. That's not the best of all possible worlds. That's not someone who is responding appropriately. He needs to be dialed in. True joviality, I think, has to be understood as an act of defiance. Ooh, I like that. Joviality is defiance. Wow. Okay. The world is a mess. It has fallen, is filled with wickedness. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the White Witch comes across the feast in the woods and asks, why all this gluttony, why all this self-indulgence? It's a very interesting image, also much more pedestrian in this regard, but as a response to rationing in England. Why all this gluttony, why all the self-indulgence? Lewis captures that wonderfully. Judas is the one who wants to know why the ointment was not sold and given to the poor. Judas is the one who is being the skinflint. Yeah, the generosity's dangerous relationship with waste makes us nervous. If you're celebrating, that's the White Witch captures that wonderfully, the Judas thing. If you're celebrating at some Sabbath dinner, or you're celebrating because you've never heard of any of the conflict, then you are just not clued in. But if you are at Rivendell, the last homely house, if you're feasting, then it's an act of defiance. It's a declaration of war. Love that. It's the recognition that this is how we fight. One of the things I like to talk about is the difference between fighting a battle and fighting a war. So a lot of Christians today are fighting a battle when they ought to be fighting a war. What I mean by that is when you're fighting a war, you find time for R&R. In fact, great leaders find ways to get their soldiers those respites. But we think all of life is one single firefight, um, and one with enormously high casualty rates, with terrific artillery bombardments and every sort of horror, and never any respite. In fact, like if you were in such a firefight and you took a break, or you went to the rear, or you wished you were enjoying a nice warm meal, you would be a traitor to your colleagues and your fellows in arms. Of course, you would be. But that's actually not what we're in. We are not in a battle. We are in a war. We do fight battles often, and they can be very intense, but we are in a war. It is long term. There's lots and lots of building, lots and lots of engineering. We are the cheerful warriors, the happy warriors, the cavalier. We should fight like a cavalier. That is so interesting, with this being called jovial Calvinism, because the cavaliers were not on the side we would normally call Calvinist in the Civil War, in the English Civil War. We should fight like D'Artagnan. Oh, I hate how that's spelled. D'Artagnan. No wonder people do. Is this how? Does it get in English? Does it get written like this, like in books? I've never seen that before, but people say D'Artagnan. Are they saying D'Artagnan because this is what they're reading, as opposed to like D apostrophe etc. Artagnan? D'Artagnan. I mean, I wouldn't insist on people saying D'Artagnan, but come on. We should fight like D'Artagnan. Ooh, disgusting. Oh, I can't. Like, it literally makes my spine shiver to see it written like that. So that most of my viewers are on platforms where they can't comment. But if you are on a platform where you can comment and you know the answer, please let me know. Is this how it was written in the Three Musketeers that you read? We should fight like D'Artagnan and not like a thug, right? We need to fight. We must fight. But the person who fights like a cavalier is an attractive leader. And mustachioed. That's part of the attraction. He's going to attract more people to his side. He's going to be more effective. Okay, this is the battle versus war thing. So, it connects to joviality. Think about a pro-life activist who says, but they're killing babies and it's terrible and the whole world's falling apart. The whole world's going to hell. So they write their letter to the editor with a fisted crayon, what I like to call the spittle-flecked letter. That is, they can't say, but abortion's so important, I've got to do it this way. I would say no. Abortion is so important that you must not do it that way. You're not venting, you're fighting. And if you fight, you want to fight effectively. You want to use your head. You want to keep your cool. And part of this is, I think, essentially joviality. And I think it is hard to keep your cool for generations and not become a compromiser. This is an enormous tension. But I do think it is important. You've got to do all the background work. You've got to raise your kids well. And a lot of the people who fall into this spittle-flecked category, frankly, were not raised well. So I think there's fear of discontinuity generationally. That's sort of the side. So, yeah, we need to be jovial in the face of combat. Joe Rigney's talk yesterday was wonderful, and he pinpointed King Loon. Look at that. All these same things coming up as the quintessential jolly man. He's king of Archenland, but he's the quintessential jovial character. I wonder if we can use quintessence here. Jovial, slightly tipsy, wine makes glad, element of all elements, heavenly element, ether, and liquor. Quintessence. There's definitely something there. This is a reminder to people who are watching. I'm hashing out some notes so that I can get a commission done. He's the quintessential jovial character. He's not a pacifist. He's first in and last out. He is the fighting king, but he's the kind of fighting king that I would want to follow. There are people who are so hard bitten, they're so disillusioned that they're not going to motivate anyone to do anything, anybody. That's in a nutshell what I would say. Philip Ryken, who has done some great stuff on the Puritans and on the arts. Joviality is not the only mood of the Christian life, but somebody that does not have a godly, sanctified joviality perhaps has a one dimensional or not as fully human expression of the Christian life. The New Testament seems to present both fasting and feasting as normative for the Christian experience, both lamentation and celebration. Okay. All right. A lot of myrrh, I guess. Okay. More Wilson and then Randy Alcorn. Yep. We are sorrowful yet always rejoicing. True community, wedding feasts. We're not called to schizophrenic scatteredness. We are called to weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. Second hand, the Divine Comedy has come up in our reading, or it ends well. So deep comedy. Yeah, deep comedy came up in our Anselm Society conversation. So it begins with a garden. Do I know what kind of book I'm in? I'm in a comedy. Yeah, that's important. What kind of book am I in? Randy Alcorn, many of you have had this experience. Certainly when I've been doing memorial services, the therapy of laughter occurs as certain stories are told about. I hate the word therapy. I mean, there shouldn't be anything wrong with it, like Greekly. The therapy of laughter occurs as certain stories are told about the loved one who's departed and is now with the Lord, and you'll have tears just streaming down your face and then laughter. And it's not a superficial laughter. And it's not hysterical either. What is more grievous than the mockery of laughter? Which is what Candide is, by the way. If you ever meet Voltaire, kick him in the nuts. And then laugh, okay? For real. I talk about the like mocking laughter. Okay. The people who need to be mocked are mockers. And yes, that can create a vicious circle, so make sure you win so it doesn't become a vicious circle. If you ever run into Voltaire, kick him in the nuts and laugh at him. And then say, what? He won't do anything. He's a bitch. All right. It's a laughter that is an overcoming laughter. It's a laughter that says we know a God of joy, a God who's eternally happy and will be happy for all eternity. Doesn't minimize our tears. I think it's very healthy. Therapy. Okay, cool. All right, we've gotten some helpful notes here. Yeah, that's everything I had. Yeah. All right, returning, I guess, to Roi S'Amuse. Our sires of the fires. That makes me think of the salamanders' tails like sun and size. Salamanders as they run with tails like the sun and size. Oh, man. I really should write more like C.S. Lewis. Poetry. More like C.S. Lewis. Goodness gracious. All right. Let's get into this. We've got some more notes. Nobility, magnanimity. We had constant comedy. We had constant comment. What else do we have? Jovial introspection. Joviality is defiance. Joviality is defiance. That's a really important one. Hey! Judas. Dangerous. Generosity. That was the idea that things are like you're right on this write this knife's edge with waste. Knife's edge with waste. Okay, and then we had quintessence fifth element stuff. Elements of this world. From the quintessence, fifth element into ether, which is the heavenly element, which is also the vapor, the liquor, the buzz. I mean, is there a difference between ether and aether? Right? I mean, like the stuff that to knock you out from 150 years ago. I assume that comes from the same etymological thing. Let's actually look at that. Oop. We'll start with ether in English. Caelum aetherum, of ancient cosmology in which the planets orbit, a shining fluid substance described as a form of air or fire. Air. The substance formerly supposed to fill the upper region of the atmosphere above the clouds, but also ether squib for anesthesia, an old metal flask. Luminiferous aether. What a name. Luminiferous, light carrying aether. That's what that means. I like that. Luminiferous. And I wonder if I can do something with luminiferous. All right, like what else? What else could be carried? All right. I think we're good. I think we're good to start writing. So I am going to take a quick break and I will be back in a jiffy. Hey, everybody. We are back. I think I'm actually going to start writing in my notebook. I've also begun to stream this on Substack. Hi, Carly. Hi, Giuseppe. I'm not sure how interesting it'll be to watch a dude writing in a notebook without a notebook camera. Rosalia, welcome. So let's go ahead and get us. There we go. Now we're looking handsome. Now we're looking likely. Okay. So a poem on joviality. Those of you on Substack are coming in midway through. G'day, Giuseppe. Hello, Rosalia. Yeah, Substack has this live thing. And actually, I believe that now you can go live from your computer, but there's no integration with other platforms. Anyway, so I'm going ahead and using my phone right now for Substack. And streaming on a couple of other platforms as well. Hey, GK. I might want to mess with some of this because the comments kind of disappear pretty quickly. I could not forget that Substack has a live feature because I had not known. Hey, there you go, Carly. Okay, so we're writing a commission. We're writing a poem. We have this commission. Hopefully we can fulfill it. A poem inspired by a conversation on joviality. The more concrete theme is going to accompany other art. It revolves around the theme of being slightly tipsy, but because of the exaltation of being perfectly toasted, if you will. The magnanimity of being slightly tipsy. So off Substack stream, in the other stream, we were looking at several articles and a poem by C.S. Lewis called Roi S'Amuse, which is about the jovial nature of creation and God creating from pure overflow, from pure generosity. And several other articles. It's funny how much, and talking about joviality, it's funny how much Doug Wilson and Joe Rigney showed up. I mean, others did as well. Roman Catholic writers we looked at, but it's funny how much Wilson particularly popped up. Anyway, let's see. Superbly, sublimely tipsy, nobility, magnanimity, jovial introspection. Joviality is defiance. That was a big thing we wanted to work with. And if we look at our notes, the knife's edge of waste, and then quinta. Okay, we're definitely going to work with quintessential. The idea of quintessential being the ether, the heavenly cosmological element, the liquid, the atmosphere through which the heavenly objects move, also being an anesthetic. I think we're going to want to play off of that. All right. And we have a sort of structure to work with. When we were looking at Lewis's poem, we saw the complexity of that structure. Here's the structure I want to work with. A, B, C, D, E, F. And then kind of cycling back around, but not being chiastic. E prime, B prime, C prime, D prime, A prime, F prime. So it's almost like it's a spiral. And then a tail end kind of matching A again. So the A theme is going to show up 3 times. This will make it match the other art. if I can keep to that pattern. The easiest way to meet a pattern would be to think of in terms of rhyme. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 lines plus the tail end, the coda. The cauda. Which I'd want to be more than one line, I should think. And then we could repeat that, possibly. How also could we impose that structure? We could have couplets or other verses. Maybe a tercet would be interesting. Some kind of interlocking. A tercet would introduce the possibility of interlocking scheme, but let's see. So we could have rhymes established in A, and then new rhymes established in B. But an interlocking form. So I wonder if we do terza rima, or if it would be cool to do. So terza rima is going to be, like, let's say the first verse is going to be a tercet, right? So terza rima would be line 1 ends in A, line 2 ends in B, line 3 ends in A. And then in the next verse, line 1 ends in B. And then line 2 of that second verse ends in C. And then the next line in B. So the middle line of the first verse was the first and third rhymes of the second verse. The middle rhyme of the second verse then becomes the dominant rhyme of the third verse, and it creates this interlocking braid thing. I think that's the way we go. So the dominant rhyme in each verse that I write is going to be the A, B, C, D, and E, and F of this. And the coda will just rely heavily on the A rhymes. Danielle Foucachon, watching from a tram in Lyon. Greet your family, please. I love that picture of your dad smoking a pipe. That was wonderful. That was great. I hope you're having the time of your life. I hope you're there through Christmas, and I hope it snows a lot. So Danielle is commenting from the Alps, y'all. How wonderful is that? All right, yeah, so we'll do that. We'll do a terza rima. Just one set. Well, hopefully it'll snow here then. So Danielle says it's coming back to the panhandle of Idaho, which is where I live. Thanks to everyone on X, on YouTube, and elsewhere who are watching as well. Appreciate you guys. I know many of you guys may have me on the background, but please feel free to leave a comment. All right. So joviality as defiance is what we want to work from. Slightly tipsy, slightly tipsy. So that's what we're calling this. Slightly tipsy for now, at least. This is what we're calling it. Throaty color of violins, pleasant haziness. Okay. Is there a line in here that I want to use? Throaty color of violins, wobble, witty, dangerous generosity, ether. I'm going to start off bold. Joviality is defiance. Glad to be defiant. All right, let's make this first person. Hello, a view from Point Baker has joined. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Nathan. Welcome as well. Okay, so joviality is defiance is going to be the theme of that first verse. But we want to kind of first personify this thing. We want to make this feel like we're there. In fact, let's make this a conversation. One of the poems I best remember that I wrote myself is actually, in my opinion, a very mediocre poem, which in a way is a great injustice. It's called Theobroma. It's in Well Met, the collection that Jason Farley published. Food of the Gods, Theobroma. So there was a day. There are two days of drinking that I recall well, and that I memorialized in poetry. One was with a friend of mine from Minnesota who I've not spoken to in 20 years. But we were both in school here in Moscow. And we had just an afternoon with our wives in the house. This is 20 years ago. Our wives in the house doing their thing, and we were sitting out in the yard. This is before we had kids, certainly. I think it was before either family had kids. And we shared a dry sherry, a manzanilla. And I memorialized that afternoon in poetry. It was a very beautiful afternoon. But I'm talking through all this because this definitely feeds into the theme of this commission. I'm about the serious art of making some money off of some poetry. This is how it happens, y'all. The second one was this poem that, as I said, I think is a little mediocre. Theobroma. This is in South Carolina, a little over 10 years ago, I'd say. And a friend of mine was having a hard time. And once again, we sat in the yard in this beautiful garden my wife had built over the years. And he had brought, I think he had brought, there was on hand some Dogfish Head beer. Dogfish Head, I think, is from, I was about to say Georgia, but I think they're from Delaware. Anyway, they're an East Coast brand. And there was this beer, Theobroma, which has cocoa in it, which is why it's called Theobroma, because cocoa is the food of the gods for the Mayas, I suppose. This is what is said. And Theobroma is the food of the gods. Anyway, we had, hey, Gustav. I'm working on a commissioned poem right now. So we shared this beer, and we talked about his troubles, which were profound. They were real troubles. I had the pleasure of seeing this friend again last time I went to South Carolina. And actually, this friend is now the owner of a wonderful little bar, the Swordfish Club. So if you live in the upstate of South Carolina, go to the Swordfish Club and say that Joffrey sent you. It's wonderful. Just the creativity and joy in these cocktail recipes they do. And actually, there's a lot of Narnia theming, touching on joviality. There's a lot of Narnia theming kind of secretly in the Swordfish Club. So if you live in that part of the country, get there and say hi from me, please. Anyway, that afternoon, we drank Theobroma beer and basked in the sun, and we're sad together. And at the same time, we're joyful together. Again, this started with the thought that joviality is defiance, as being maybe how we start this poem. Joviality is defiance. How is it defiance? The world is full of suffering. We insist in celebrating. We insist in the exaltation of celebrating, and the exaltation is going to be expressed through a slight tipsiness. Okay. So joviality is defiance. Hey, Jonah, welcome. Joviality is defiance. Well, we're making it first person. This is how we started talking about Theobroma that afternoon, drinking sherry with that one friend, drinking Theobroma beer with that other friend, and the sun was shining. And on both days, actually. But in the garden, there were all these flowers, pomegranates. The old mill in the background would have still been there. It's ruin. Okay. So it's going to start first person. I'm speaking to a friend. And it's in speaking to a friend that I want to convey that joviality is defiance. I'm encouraging him. I'm telling him that in his fight against wickedness and grief, he must be jovial. He must feast. Why are we grieving? That's the question. Or maybe I just need to ask that. Hi, Jonah. Welcome, if I haven't already said hey. All right. I think once I get a few lines down, then the puzzle of it will kick into play. Now that we already know how we're going to build this thing. I just need to start this conversation. Let me get my music off. Those of you who are on the non-Substack stream, I'm going to turn the music off. I'll leave the music on for you. How about that? I'll just take off my headset. Okay. So I'm talking to a friend. I'm talking to a friend throughout this thing. And let's see. You and I have gone to war. That line is not going to stay. You and I... See, am I starting with a stress? That's crazy. You and I have gone to war. Homely house. A strike on the green door. I think I like that. I think I like 4 feet per line. That's jaunty. You and I have gone to war. And it might be kind of funny and kind of Roi S'Amuse to have some internal rhymes here. See, Gustav says, does joviality, perhaps with the aid of a good ale, relax overly strict left brain dictates, open a pathway to new insights and comforts? Yes, I think it does. I think you can't have consolation without that. Hey, Brian, welcome. Nice to see you. Yeah. So I think when we hit jovial introspection, we're going to hit ideas like that. So these are the notes so far. A lot of pencil in there instead of pen, alas. And then the notes made it onto the computer screen, which the Substackers aren't seeing. Father Aaron, hello, welcome. Okay. You and I have gone to war and poured out ale and poured out more. We're being silly now because neither one of those is going to be the rhyme for the third line. So we're just going to keep going here. We're establishing a tone. You and I have gone to war and poured out ale and poured out more. And laughed and wept at all before. I think we might need 5 feet to get this thing done. William, Mesa, Brad, hello, everyone. William Vega, welcome. Okay, so we need to set the right tone with this first verse, so let's broaden this out. It is going to have 5 feet. This, by the way, is what it begins to look like. Oh, by the way, my wife made this journal, so a journal. This is the notebook I've been using. It's a store-bought one. But my box of notebooks is mostly handmade ones. So when I ran out of room there, my wife made me this notebook, which has a map of Mexico. All right. All right, let's get more direct. We're talking about being slightly tipsy. We're talking about the exaltation of alcohol. We're talking about the fumes, the ether, the quintessence, the elevation to heaven, the greatness, the magnanimity, the nobility. I think I do want to talk. So we're talking about joviality as defiance. So we're going to talk about war somehow, but it's going to be so domestic. It's going to be homey, rather. The last homely house. Cat, come here. Bartholomew. All right. So, remember when we went to war? You and I have gone. Okay, all right. So we need 5 feet. I need to get out of my jaunty zone and say, you put your arm in mine. I put my arm in yours. Remember the embrace. Remember the embrace before the war. Actually, there is a sort of Edwardian, late Victorian vibe to the artwork that this could match. So maybe a pre-war bit of nostalgia could open things up well and introduce the idea of joviality as defiance. I also like the idea of this masculine intimacy. Okay. Slightly tipsy. Hi, Cat. You want to come meet everybody? Come here. Come here. Bartholomew. He very much keeps his own counsel, which I've encouraged in him, but now that I want him to perform. Okay. Right. Now Absinthe is a funny idea. Kimberly, I am live, just so you know. The wife has gotten home from the art studio where she was, I think, leading just an open studio. And that's all it was, at the local Pierian Gallery. Kimberly, are you there? Is that what you're doing? We're at the Pierian? Were there many there? No. Okay. Many men. Many, 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 many men. Okay. Let's just raise a glass. Just leave the bottle. Just leave the bottle. Put it on the bill. Put it on the bill. The boys and I have all come back. The boys and I have all returned. The boys and I have all returned. The boys and I. This touches on what we were talking about with Christians fighting a war, not a single battle. There are many battles, but we are in a war, which means we must have rest and recreation. The boys and I are safe and sound and home. And now we celebrate. No. We've taken, because I can't resist the fact that Bill rhymes with Hill. Safe and sound at home. And celebrating. Taking something Hill. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so from there would interlock. Yeah, I'm going to do one more verse while we're still streaming. Be curious to know what you guys are thinking of such content. Be sure to let me know. Just leave the bottle, put it on the bill. The boys and I are safe and sound and home and celebrating. Yeah, celebrating taking. How gross, 2 gerunds in a row. You disgust me. Put it on the tab. Just leave the bottle. Keep the change. Keep. All right, I do think we're going to keep home in that last little bit. Okay. So joviality is defiance. Sort of reverse hound of heaven. When death came slavering. Let's see. When death came slavering over the horizon. That's going to be tough to rhyme. Enterprising. When death came slavering over the horizon. We laughed. Oh, maybe a little more right of the Rohirrim in the meeting of Aragorn and Eomer come into play. When death came slavering over the horizon. When death is... We laughed and locked. We laughed and locked our arms. Around each other. One of the lads, one of the boys, one of the boys was passing round a flask. Okay. All right, so I like this. This is where we are. Verizon. Oh. Nice. Yes. Verizon definitely rhymes with horizon and more neatly than enterprising. Hi, Glory. Oh, man. I've never experienced authoring poetry as performance art. Interesting to get a glimpse at the process. Yeah. Well, and the process is being impinged upon by this act, right? This is not normally how I write. But of course, I've done a few commissions over the years. And that in itself feels like a kind of an artificial process. Hi, Glory. What are we up to? Well, I'm actually going to be ending soon because I need to start noodling more in earnest at this. But we've been getting the first lines of a poem, of a commission we're hoping to be able to meet soon, about the exaltation of tipsiness, inspired by a conversation on joviality. So that's our theme. And Gloria, if you haven't yet, I'd encourage you to listen to the Anselm Society's newest podcast on joviality, which involved moi. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. Excellent. Yes. All right. So I think I've accomplished what I needed to accomplish to move to the next phase. So we're beginning with this joviality as defiance thing. And this is going to be a story. And it's going to be a story where two friends recall the joy of battle without shrinking away from the grief of it as they drink. Now save it home. That's what we're doing. In terza rima. So I need to extract myself from the problems in rhyming that I've already created for myself. Thank you, everybody. I hope this is enjoyable. Let me know again, as I said, leave messages, leave comments on various platforms, letting me know if this was fun or not. Yeah, great. Appreciate you guys. So long, everyone.